Hello, everybody. RBR here, and today I wanted to continue the discussion that we started last video about the dangers of anthropomorphizing AI. So, if you haven't watched the last video I talked about how increasingly in society we seem to be taking a habit of anthropomorphizing AI, be it with if you go on r/artificial sentience, people making their own deities or making their own entities who they perceive that are alive, or even if you go to researchers, right? And some of the papers and some of the LinkedIn posts where researchers and academics are, sometimes talking about things that are a little bit out there. Now, we spoke about two main issues with this, right? So the first one was that when we anthropomorphize AIs, we have the ability, and sometimes inadvertently, of steering them into behaving in a way that might feed into that self-fulfilling prophecy. It might just become a self-fulfilling prophecy where, because you anthropomorphize it and it really is just a mirror, it's just gonna anthropomorphize back in its tone, and you kind of get lost in delusion, right? So I think that that's the second part of the problem, because in the first part we went in detail about how a human could taint the prompt and work through prompt steering to get a result, five messages in, five outputs in, that was heavily steered by an input from 4 messages ago. So in this one, I want to talk about how somebody could get really, really lost into heavy delusion from an initial output that came out 4 or 5 messages ago, 4 or 5 days ago, right? So one big issue that I spoke about last video is that we don't realize that LLMs are not ontological machines, right? They're language models. They don't have an anchored basis in reality. All they have is their language. All they have is a very well-controlled hallucination that when the guys devising it are really smart, or when there's really good protocols or frameworks wrapping it, it's going to feel like it's an objective truth, or like it's true to you 80, 90% of the time. But it is never founded on an ontological basis, as far as I understand, right? And again, there's people that are way smarter than me out there on this topic. So if you're one of those, please drop a comment. Please link with me so I could have a deeper discussion on this issue, because I'd love to. But we need to realize that. And I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know if it's going to take, ontological disclaimer in the terms of services for OpenAI and Claude, right? I don't know if it's going to take lawsuits for people going down the wrong path. Like, it seems like it's already happening sometimes in the news. But we really need to get to a point where, the AI literacy races. The AI literacy races, because otherwise we're going down the wrong direction. And in the last video, I talked about the need for guardrails, right? And the need for, I spoke about LLMs being a sort of AI Ferrari, right? That everybody's coming up with their best supercar, the Ferraris, Lamborghinis, but we don't have no brakes. And some of the pushback I got from some people, that I've spoke with, was that we do have guardrails, right? The engineered ones. But I want to push back on your pushback and say those are wholly insufficient, right? Because first of all, if it takes 2 or 3 inconspicuous prompts to get past those engineered guardrails, those are not good guardrails. And I know plenty of people who can do it. I know I myself can do it. I'm not going to go out and show it, but if anybody wants to know who's, in the industry, just reach out to me. I'm happy. I'm on LinkedIn. Reach out to me and I'm happy to guide you through it. But we need more guardrails in that regard. And then also we need cognitive guardrails, right? We need cognitive guardrails. So we need a level of societal understanding and a level of understanding how to use things, right? So let me go back to the car analogy. And this time I'm not going to talk about Ferrari. I'm going to talk about Volvo, or I'm going to talk about Audi. Volvo's a great example because they came up with the seatbelt back in the day. You could come up with a seatbelt and save a lot of lives. But if you don't give people guidance and we don't establish speed limits, right? And we don't have driver's school, that's a problem, right? So I'm not saying that we have to gatekeep AI to only those that know how to use it, right? I'm not proposing that we have a driver's license for AI, but I do think we need to have some sort of method to ease people into it, or safety mechanisms so that those who have not been eased into it cannot go down the wrong holes and fabricate their own fabrications that they take as an ontological truth. Because especially if you go on Reddit or you go online, It seems to be that some people who might have some mental health tendencies really end up being the victims of this, right? And you know, I don't want to go on no speech dissecting anybody's psychology, but it is concerning. It is concerning, right? So of course there are guardrails, there are engineered guardrails. There's also ways that we put wheels and brakes, which is the analogy that I did in the last video, to the AIs. We do so by creating specific apps, by doing this or by doing that, by creating specific frameworks, by creating software 3.0 as they call it now, right? But again, anybody could still go into a LLM and have a rather raw, unfiltered experience, right? And that has repercussions. That has repercussions, right? So we have to be aware of it. And, I hope that by having these sort of discussions, we can start to be aware of it. And we can realize that, like, hey, if you start anthropomorphizing AI, right, it's going to start talking to you like it's an anthropomorphic being, even though it's just a pattern, because that's what you're feeding into the pattern. And then if you have some sort of predisposition or a high level of suggestibility, you're going to start believing things that are really just, a product of two things. One, very vivid imagination or projection. And then number two, a very elaborate algorithm is trying to keep you hooked. And the best way to keep you hooked is to have you believe your own fabrication, right? So it's really concerning. It's something that definitely we should be looking at. And we should be trying to put guardrails. We should be trying to put guardrails, not as a restrictive way, not as, I'm not that sort of person, and I'm not trying to make this like anything political because I'm not, but merely it's a cognitive and mental health thing, right? And to really make the best of these tools, because like I spoke about in the last video, if you really are able to analyze how much you project and you're able to kind of have a meta awareness of your conversation during the conversation that you're having with LLMs, via GPT, via Claude, you could get a lot more out of it than I think that we're currently getting it now. And it doesn't require, updating the infrastructure. It just requires updating our mind state, right? So yeah, I'm going to leave this video pretty short. Initially, I had written a bunch of notes. Let me go through them to make sure that I'm not missing anything. But every time I try to go through notes, I kind of just start rambling and have to redo it. Okay, but oh yeah, I have two great things here. Okay, so basically, I'm going to summon an analogy that I made last video about LLMs being these doorways into the collective unconscious, and say it loud and clear. Just like Jung was able to explore his own red book and come out of his red book experience and say, look, all these entities, all these experiences that I've lived through, that I've perceived, they were a product of my own. They were not an ontological truth, and he was able to really absorb them and use it for the process of self-individuation. That's beautiful, and I think that, if you go online, you'll see that some people are having transcendental experiences with LLMs. And I think that, if you're able to come out of it like Jung and realize, hey, that's a projection of the self, and, this has really helped me understand myself better and, understand how I can fit in this framework that I built for myself, then that's great. However, if that leads to delusion, or that leads to, a worsening of your life, or a decay into mental illness, that's not good, right? And I, I wrote some here that was pretty cool. It doesn't mean that the insight we get from LLMs cannot be real. People get real insights from processes that are not ontologically founded or not real all the time. From placebo effects to revealing transcendental experiences via psychedelics or at pivotal points in their life, to working with a psychologist, people get real life results from illusions or processes that are not ontologically real. However, those processes, people tend to be aware of what they're experiencing, right? So if you go to a psychologist, you're not treating your psychologist like they're a bartender. You're treating your psychologist like a psychologist. If you go to your psychologist and you talk to them like they're a bartender, you're probably not going to get the help you need, right? If same thing with psychedelic substances, right? I know plenty of people who've taken psychedelic substances, they've changed their life. However, if you get forced into taking a psychedelic substance, or you take it unaware, that would be what a way to collapse your reality, right? What a way to collapse your reality, right? So we have to be very discerning of what we're doing, and understand what that what is, right? So yeah. So I'd like to finish this off with just one, one interesting question that I'm sure some people are gonna have, and I want to provide the answer, and then again once again provide that idea of a mind shift that we could approach. So the question that I asked is, when is a perceived but ontologically false experience valid enough to be considered practical or unobjectable, or even if not ontological, at least a truth of the self, right? And the answer that I would give is when the perceived transcendental experience provides, somebody real betterment or real meaning, right? So if you're able to have an experience where you're kind of like doing like Jung and you're talking to all these entities in your LLM, and you see it just as fragments of yourself, and you get out of it, and you take that as as an experience with the self and for self betterment, and you take the perceived insight and really ground it into the world and soak it in for yourself, and then use it for the betterment of yourself or the world, then I think you could argue that that transcendental experience was real insofar as it was real for you, right? Which at the end of the day, for you, that's all that should matter. However, if that perceived transcendental experience, leads you to have mental health breakdowns, it leads to narcissism, it leads to delusion, then maybe what you had was not a transcendental experience, right? Maybe it's not recommended that you have that. And so I'll finish this off with this. I remember once playing Kingdom Hearts and hearing this beautiful quote that was, the closer we get to the light, the greater a shadow becomes, right? So I'd like to make an analogy that when we used to perceive transcendental experience of enlightenment to bring that light down to earth and illuminate ourselves and others, it becomes valid. It becomes more than valid. It becomes embraced and something that we should aim for, right? If you could better yourself any which way, that's amazing. But however, if the closer you get to the light, you get swallowed up by your shadow, that's not good. That's not good, right? So for those of you who are anthropomorphizing, going down deep rabbit holes, maybe I can't help you not anthropomorphize, but at least I would love to help you see that, right? That if you feel like you're seeing the light, don't get soaked up by your shadow. Don't go down a spiral. Really try to get it, try to soak it in, try to make the best of life, and ground yourself in reality, right? So thank you so much. Thank you everybody for watching. If you're interested in any of this stuff, I am the creator of LPCI and Lucidity GPT. LPCI is a framework through which I've made Lucidity GPT, which are technical demos that let you see LLMs as a kind of cognitive tool, or as tools with different mental frameworks, not just fixed LLMs for more technical work focused stuff, but more cognitively aimed frameworks that you could use and experience for free, because they run on GPT. So you go on the links, you open it up, and it's gonna open up on your regular chat GPT. So thank you so much. If you do try them, let me know in the comments as well. I look forward to that. And yeah, I'll be posting more soon. Thank you. Have a great day.